Hello, this is Pastor Jim with today's 5-minute challenge. And my challenge for you today comes out of 1 Peter, and it's be sober. Now, Peter wasn't just talking about not being drunk, although that certainly would apply, but he's talking about more than that. And so I want you to look at 1 Peter chapter 5 and verse 8. And in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8, it says, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil walks about like a roaring lion, seeking who he may devour. Now, it's interesting that in this letter that Peter wrote, 3 times he uses this command to be sober. And he always uses this in conjunction with another instruction. So like in chapter 1, he said, gird up the loins of your mind, be sober. In verse 4, he says, be sober and watch unto prayer. And then in verse 8, he says, be sober, be vigilant. So it was a repeated challenge to the ones who he was writing letters to. He was repeatedly saying, hey, this is important. This is my challenge to you. And what he's talking about here is staying alert, being watchful, not letting down your guard, not being lulled to sleep, staying alert. Don't go into autopilot. Don't coast. And that's really where I want to kind of focus on with this being sober, being alert, not coasting. It's real tempting just to kind of coast along and just say, okay, everything's just getting by, we're doing okay. And we have to watch that we stay sober, stay alert, because as Peter said, there is an enemy. He's looking around, watching for those who are not being alert, not being ready for him. So, and I want to do a little personal example, personal testimony. This goes back like 35 years when I first got turned on to the Lord and started to learn about his promises, that his promises were for me today. And we had just bought a house, and through a number of things, we got into some financial real stretch there while we were working on 2 houses and trying to sell one and had another one. And things were really intense for a period of time. And we were making double house payments, double maintenance things, and everything was coming down. And finally my insurance company told me that we're not going to be able to insure your house if nobody's in it, if you don't sell it. So all these pressures were coming on me, but yet I was only a few months in the Lord at that time, had really had a relationship with him. But somehow I knew that I was going to come through this. Somehow I had a revelation, didn't have much light, but the light I had showed me that God really loved me and these promises were true and I'm coming through this. And I remember telling myself, I'm going to be so glad when I'm through this because then I can coast. And it was just like I could never imagine anything being as intense as this. But there's a danger, and sometimes a danger comes after the victory. And we did make it through that. But I found out you can't coast. There's a danger that comes sometimes right after a victory. Some of you are believing for things now during this the coronavirus thing, this COVID-19 thing, and some of you may have been affected financially or other ways. And some of you, we know that there's testimonies, that some of you are receiving testimonies because we're getting those testimonies. So some of you are seeing victories in the midst of this march, in the midst of this standing. And so there's a temptation then to kind of like, and coast and just kind of ease back. But Peter is warning us here, say, be sober, be alert, be vigilant, gird up the loins of your mind. Don't start thinking of just getting by. Because if you're just getting by, you're settling for less than what God has for you. That's another way of just coasting. It's like, okay, I've got enough. I don't need any more. I don't need to do this fight. You can get tired of the fight instead of walking in the victory. So I'm going to encourage you here as I wrap up to take a look at First Peter's that letter and follow that instruction to be sober, be alert, don't be coasting. Amen.